Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim R. Today is episode 100, and we're going to be interviewing Kathy M. How are you doing today, Kathy?
I'm doing really good. Thank you.
Doing well. And just to make sure you clicked accept, right, to be recorded.
Yes.
All right, good to go. So let's start the interview and dive in. Tell me about growing up when you were young.
Well, I was raised by a godly woman. My mom was my best friend. She never used drugs. My older sister, I always thought the world of. I wanted to be like her because she was older, of course, but my mom was my best friend. She was handicapped. She was in a wheelchair, and I was always afraid to leave her side. So I had friends, but I didn't go nowhere because I was afraid she was going to die. And so I lived like that all of my life, thinking my mom was going to die because we were told that at one time that my mom wasn't going to live, past a certain age. When she was a kid, she wasn't supposed to live past 13, I think it was. And she died almost a year ago at age 81.
What did she suffer from? Why was she paralyzed?
She had spinal bifida. It
Okay.
was, she had fluid on her spine. She was a double amputee. My mom was from Olive Hill, Kentucky. She just didn't have the proper care. But my mom sang in a country band when we were growing up, and she drank on the weekends, and that was the only thing my mom ever did was drink. And but her health, down through the years deteriorated, and like I said, we lost her in August. And we always thought it was going to be from her spinal bifida that would take her, but it was totally something different. Her kidneys just stopped working pretty much. And I think she was tired. My mom, like I said, my mom was my best friend. And until I met my now ex-husband, I was 15 when I met him. Now, mind you, this man never drank. He would take us to the Eagles Club, and he would never drink. He always drank pop. And then I got introduced through him, through his sister, pills like downers and uppers. And then it was, next thing you know, it was cocaine.
At what age? What age did you first get introduced to this stuff?
I'm saying it was around 18 because we got married at 18. So I was still living at home, So we got married on May the 29th of 1985. And I was 18. And we moved in with his sister. And then that's when it all began.
And real quick, just going back a little bit, how was high school and stuff? Did you do good in high school?
High school, I was a loner. I mean, yeah, I didn't have very many friends in high school. Like I said, I was a mama's girl, and but think about it now. In some the where I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and we lived in a little town called Obetz, and everybody in the neighborhood called my mom mom. So I had friends, but I would never go spend the night with anybody or anything because I was so afraid to leave my mom. But school, I went to, it's funny because I went to the same school all the way up to 12th grade. I got married May the 29th, and I was supposed to graduate June the 7th.
So you were still in high school when you got married?
Yes, I was still in high school. But school, my mom, it was funny. My mom used to say I went to school to chase boys or learn about boys. but yeah, I went all the way to the 12th grade. I did not get to graduate. I was missing a half a credit, so I could kick myself in the butt for it. But that's something else that I could work on. But yeah, so.
So you were saying going into your 20s, what was it like? What was it like? You said that was just about to get crazy.
Yeah, when we were living, like I said, it first started with downers, And then it gradually went to cocaine. I used to snort cocaine. And then I would drink. And I got pregnant with my first child at 19, which of course, when I got pregnant, I didn't do nothing but smoke cigarettes. Each of my pregnancies, I was doing drugs before I got pregnant, but I never stayed with the drugs while I was, if that makes sense. So, like I said, we lived with his sister and her husband, and I helped with her kids to take care of her kids. And I was abused pretty much on a daily basis.
By who?
By my now ex-husband.
Okay.
Now before we got married, he treated me like a queen, and he was my first love. And we were brought up that when you marry till death do you part. So I figured that pretty much the hell I was going through was normal, because that's what I was raised, and he had me brainwashed pretty much. Every time he would hit me and I'd ask him, why you're hitting me? Well, I love you. And I believed that. I've been away from him for 13 years. So for 23 years, I believed everything he told me. He cheated, he lied. And then back in 2000, back in 2000 is when I started using crack. And I've been addicted. Well, I'm not now. And I was addicted to crack from 2000 until 2 years ago. Now, 5 years ago, I know I'm all over that's my ADHD or whatever you call it. 5 years ago, I had to go into treatment in Ironton, Ohio. I was doing 10 perk 30s a day, snorting them.
Wow.
And so not only did I have a crack problem, I had a pill problem.
So the pill problem goes back as long as you could remember, as long as this all started, right?
When I
have a question about those Percocets.
Okay.
Were they like a bluish type that said M on one side, 30 on the other?
Yes.
There is a very, very good chance, a very, very, very good chance you were doing fentanyl. Because I've been studying it because I'm writing an article on the opioid epidemic. So you're right, I write articles for us. And I've been studying it, and that's one of the things that they showed was those specific ones, the M30s, down like the Sinaloa cartel and people like that are making those, but they're making it with fentanyl to make it stronger and make it more addictive.
Well, let me tell you, when I started using opiates, I'm trying to think, maybe it was in 2012 is when I started doing the opiates. I did I did cocaine from the time I was 18 until, crack is cocaine. So 2 years ago, but I started using crack in 2000, and in 2012 is when I started doing the pills. It started out with, I had surgery. I had a partial hysterectomy. So they gave me perk 5s. And then I can't remember exactly how I knew to snort them, but I started snorting them. I first started out with Percocets, then I'd go to Vicodin, and it just kept getting, and then every relationship, because I kept going back and forth to my ex-husband until, like I said, 13 years ago. I would leave him because I was tired of the abuse. But I'd also go back because he was my true love, and he was all I knew. But in the meanwhile, I would have other boyfriends. But every man that I had been in a relationship was either an alcoholic or did drugs. So I was always, doing them because they were doing them. But yeah, I got 5 years ago when I went to the land of Goshen, I I called a hotline and told them I wanted to drive myself off of a bridge because I was just so tired. The pills were so expensive and I was so sick. And so I went into treatment. I first had to go to a detox. I went in a detox for a year, for a day and a half. And then I went into another detox hospital for 3 days. And then on the seventh day, I ended up in Ironton, Ohio, and was there for 6 months. While I was in there, I got the Vivitrol. And since
Is
the
that the
day
one is that the one that stops you from getting high?
that's one that they use a lot of people for heroin, but it's for opiates. And I got clean December the 17th. Well, I should say when I first detoxed was December the 10th. When so that was the last time I ever used a Percocet. I got out in 6 months and stayed on the Vivitrol. And I stayed on it for 2 years until I knew that it was out of my head. And like I said, I've been sober from opiates for 5 years and I'm not on nothing.
Well, let's go back up a little bit. You said you were with your husband and life was abusive back then. Let's go back to
Yeah.
so what kept you there?
I loved him. I thought I loved him. I'm not going to lie. I did love him. He was my kids' dad. He was my first love. And he had me so convinced that that was normal of the way he not only did he physically abuse me, he verbally abused me and mentally abused me. Any kind of abuse you could think of, that man did to me. And
What kind of things would he say?
I'm sorry?
What kind of things would he say?
Oh my goodness. He never called me by my name. He'd call me a whore. He'd call me a slut. He'd call me the C word. Anything that you can think of, he would call me. The only time he'd call me by Kathy is when he wanted something. I remember times that he would get me in front of his friends and smack around on me. He would tell me I was worthless. He would tell me that I will never mount anybody. Nobody would ever love me like he did. He had a girlfriend at one time, and I was so in love with this man. I even moved a girlfriend in with us. That's how sick I was because I loved him. I thought I loved him. With the 2 weeks after I said I do is when the abuse started, when he started hitting on me. He accused me of everything. I was raised that you don't cheat, and I would always tell, and I finally learned down through the years, those who accuse are the ones that are doing. But he called me everything, and he told me that I was ugly, and I weighed 115 pounds, but I was too fat. He said if I ever got fat that he would leave me. And like I said, I had left so many times. I wish I had $1 for each time I left him. And each time I filed for divorce. And the one time that we were homeless, we became homeless because of the addiction, living out in the woods.
How old were you when that happened?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I'm going to be all over the place because certain things coming. I had lost my kids in 96 due to them being molested. And
okay, so let's back up until then. How old were you when that was happening?
I was homeless a couple times.
But how old were you when the first time? Because let's back up. When did you first get homeless?
I would say it was, let's see, my oldest daughter's 37. So it was 32 years ago, the first time I was homeless. And I lived out in the woods it was me, my ex-husband, and his sister and her boyfriend. There was a bunch of us that were living out in the woods and smoking crack. So it had to be, no, I take that back. Let me take that back. It wasn't when I started using crack. So it was 2000 when I was homeless. So my fault. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
that was with my ex-husband. I was homeless. And when my oldest daughter was 5, I was living in a shelter with my ex-husband's brother. Yeah. I'm a mess, I'm telling you.
So
But
when you
it was,
guys were living, you were living out in the woods, you said.
yeah,
What were you living in? Did you have a tent?
it was what he called a hooch. It was a tarp, and it was covered. He even had a drum inside of it and burned wood. And he would go, all of us would go to work at a temporary service and make $30 a day and get high and then start all over the next day. But and the bad thing about it is it was in the dead winter that I lived outside. I had lost so many homes. I have lost so much. But yeah, when I was homeless, it was so bad. And but it was when I cracked before and it never did anything to me. And then I spent like $2,000 on it because my ex-husband, he's like, well, you ain't smoked enough of it. Yeah, and that's the year 2000 when I spent 2000. I had just got my income tax and spent $2,000 on it, and I been hooked ever since. Since 2 years ago. So, but my addiction pretty much, it's not only been because of my ex-husband, it's been because of the fear of losing my mom all them years, because I was so close.
Yeah.
My real dad walked out on us kids when we were little because he was afraid my mom was going to die. That was his excuse. My mom married my stepdad. He was good to us. I mean, he had his faults. He was verbally abusive to my mom when he drank. He was an alcoholic. So that was another thing that was in my family, or around me. Was alcohol was mainly the thing that was always around me. But so I didn't really know my dad. And then, like I said, my stepdad. Now my sister and my stepdad was always close, but I always thought you have one dad and one mom, and that's what I never called my stepdad dad, but my sister did. So not having my dad in my life, it kind of hurt me too. And then I never had a sister relationship with my sister growing up that I can remember, even though I wanted to be like her. And but as time went on, I realized a lot of it was because of my addiction, that we never had a relationship. And she's 4 years older than I am. And when I went into treatment 5 years ago, she had hugged me. She never told me I'd never heard her tell me she loved me. Never. And the day I went into treatment, she hugged me, told me how proud she was of me and that she loved me. And nobody in this world knows how much that meant to me. And then when I got out of rehab, I was sober for 2 weeks, and then I relapsed on crack. I relapsed on crack twice, matter of fact. So
who'd you relapse with?
I'm sorry?
Did you do it with somebody or were you by yourself?
What, when I relapsed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first time because I moved.
Well, which one? Were you alone or were you not?
No, the one time that I relapsed, no, matter of fact, no, I was with somebody. Yeah.
Okay.
Each time that I had relapsed, I was with, it wasn't a man, it was supposed to have been a friend, but it was only somebody I got high with. And that's when, I moved to Mansfield. But when I used to get high, with my ex-husband and his family, I was always with I was always with Scott, because Scott would never, sorry, I didn't want to, he would never let me leave his side. He always had to be with me. He always had to be around me. that man did a lot of damage to my mind. I mean, I still have flashbacks.
Who was this to you?
Huh?
Who was he to you?
He was my husband at the time.
Okay, your husband at the time.
Yeah. I've only been married once. And but he, I said, and I still to this day have nightmares. I have to take medicine because I have flashbacks of some of the things that he did to me. And people that in his family, probably sit back and, yeah, I don't believe that. No, but what goes behind closed doors, and Scott used to blame me for everything. It was always my fault because he hit me. It was my fault because he called me a name. It was my fault that he left. It was always, and I believed him, you know, and I was like, and I did say to him one day, I said, why do you hit me? I said, have you ever hit your mom? Because I've always been told you treat your wife like you do your mom, you know? And he's like, no, he said, she would backhand me. I said, well, why do you hit me? He said, because I love you. So I believed all them years that was love, all them years until 13 years ago. I believed him. I believed everything he told me. And, even when I had my kids and stuff, my oldest daughter had seen a lot. And she'll tell you, and she's, like I said, 37. She would tell you at the age of 5, some things that she remembers her dad saying or doing. Now my youngest daughter, she's 32, and I kind of left Scott when she was 4 months old, but then I kept going back and forth. But never really did I stay with him for a very long time after Summer was born. But I finally, 13 years ago, I wanted to kill him. And I called my mom up on a payphone. I said, Mom, I'm just calling to let you know that today's the day I'm going to kill him. I was so tired. I was so tired of all the abuse. And I literally wanted to kill that man 13 years ago. If I had a gun, I believe I would have killed him. That's how I felt. I mean, that's how much abuse that he had put on my mind and my heart. And so I continued using drugs to not even deal with it, to not deal with the pain that he caused. And then, my kids never really knew their dad because he didn't want to be around. He didn't want to be around. The way he said it is, if I have to see you, I don't want to be around the kids. So, but yeah, I can't blame him for using because it was my choice. But that's how I started using. But I had a lot of things going on in my mind, and then I had a really rocky time. I had lost both of my kids back in 96, 97, due to pervert. And then I neglected them because, again,
What do you mean? So explain that to us. What do you mean? How did you lose them?
Both of my girls, unfortunately, was molested. My one daughter was molested twice by 2 different people. So
How old were they?
She was 5 the first time, and the second time, because she was 11 when I lost her, and the other one was 7. So 5 and 10, because she was done twice, and then the other one was when she was about 6. So it wasn't like I lost him at birth. I lost him, and I thought I was their, because their dad was hardly around, because of him cheating or him doing his thing. And then we were just back and forth, back and forth. I lived with my mom more than I did us living, in a house or whatever, because he would abuse me. I would leave, and then he would beg me to come back. I'll change. I'm sorry. I promise I'll get help. I'd go back. 2 weeks later, it would start all over. So like I said, up until from the time I was 18 till 13 years ago, this is what I dealt with, of going back and forth. And then, so when I was trying my best, even though when I lost my kids, I was with the guy that molested both of my kids. And they
Were
told,
you with him? Were you dating him?
yeah, I was dating him, and which I didn't know. The first time, let me go back. The first time, my daughter that was 5 years old, he was my neighbor at one time, but then we became a couple for a short time. This is one of the times that I was away from Scott, but he had took my daughter. He had taken my sister-in-law's daughter first, but he had taken my daughter and took her to McDonald's. I'll never forget this. It's like yesterday. He had taken her to McDonald's, and it was like 8:30 at night, but I trusted him. I thought I trusted him. And this was like 8:30. They came back, and she come in, and she sat down he had just dropped her off pretty much. And she came in, and she sat down like I don't know what she sat down, not Indian style, but like a frog, if you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
She's sitting there in front of the TV. She had a bag of Cheetos and an Orange Crush. That's all she had. Now, mind you, he was supposed to take her to McDonald's, but then I didn't put two and two together, So she wasn't her. I can think about it now and think she really wasn't herself. But I just thought, I really don't know what I thought. So she had, this was like on maybe a Friday, and she always went on the weekends to my mom's and stay at my mom's, her and my other daughter. And so she had went to my mom's, and I think it was the next day my mom called me, and she said, "Are you still seeing such and such?" And I was like, "No," I said, "pretty much." I said, "He dropped Danielle off, and I haven't, talked to him since." And she said, "Well, I think you need to come and talk to your daughter." And I'm like, "Why? What's going on?" She said, "You just need to come and talk." So I went, and of course I was freaking out. I didn't know what was going on, because you don't think it could happen to you. You know about that, when we were growing up, if anybody touches you or whatever. And I used to tell my kids that all the time. So I had went to my mom's, and she was sitting there, and she was crying, and she still wouldn't tell me what was going on at first. And finally I had to sit down, and I was crying, and I said, "Look, you can tell me anything that's, I'm your mom. I'm here to protect you. And if I don't know what's going on, how am I going to help you?" Finally, she told me what happened. And I called the police, of course, and took her downtown, and they checked her and all that. And she was penetrated. And so, long story short, she had told the detective where it happened. She drew pictures. She told him when it happened, how it happened, and this and that. And the system let her down. She didn't get no relief, because they said because he didn't do a certain thing inside of her, that they can't take him, they can't prosecute.
Can't prove he did it.
So he got away with that. Now, mind you, 2 years prior to that, which I found out later on, that he was in Florida and molested two of his nephews and did prison time. But I didn't know all this, So, so she had to, deal with that, and then it happened again by another um, guy I was seeing at the time. But he didn't, he just fondled him and my other daughter. And the system let him down again because he didn't do they just got him for gross imposition and all that. So I lost my kids because of it. And so I started using drugs heavier. I started drinking. I was in the bars from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 3 o'clock in the morning drinking. I didn't care. I didn't want to live. When I lost my kids, I lost my world. My youngest daughter is she was at 4 months old. She had RSV, which is an upper respiratory virus, and she lost 50% of her oxygen. So she's got a mind of a 13-year-old. And she was in and out of foster care from the time I lost her until she was 18, because every time somebody would take her, she would. It was sad, and I know now that she was reaching out. She wanted attention. And then my oldest one was adopted by. She was adopted at 14 by a couple that was supposed to be church going people. He was a pervert, and they were swingers. Well, they introduced her into, she's seen it, but the guy that
seen what?
She knew that they were swingers. So I think she was curious, and the man that she had married, they became swingers. So, it's like, when I lost these girls, I really wanted to die. I tried to commit suicide a couple of times, and then I went to a mental health place to get on medication, and the medication wasn't helping. And
how did you get in touch with them? So you went out and sought help yourself?
I know, because the Children's Services, they pretty much said, this is what you got to do. We have to have you evaluated, because I tried to get my kids back. I did, but I didn't fight hard enough, put it that way, for my kids. And I was too far gone into crack to really say, okay, but Children's Services had me evaluated, and I was bipolar and depression and all that from when they evaluated me. So they put me on medication, and of course I wanted to get high, so I stopped taking the medication. So there I was back at the point of being depressed all the time. And so when my kids now my mom got to be in my kids' life, and my sister. I was the only one, and their dad wasn't allowed. So my mom, God love her, she snuck she snuck my oldest daughter when she was 16 to see me. And it really helped me out a lot, even though as soon as she left, I was getting high, but yeah, when I lost my kids, I didn't want to live. So I was trying every which way to end it. And I figured that they was better off without me, because the people that the kids were with was always telling how a bad person I was, But in the meanwhile, my mom was telling them, your mom's doing good. She put me on a pedestal, my mom did. And because I isolated a lot away from my mom, because I was ashamed, because, my mom never thought in the million years that I would be the one to be into drugs. So when they turned 18, they came into my life. And I'm very grateful that they didn't hate me, which they should have. Now, mind you, my kids has told me
So you did not raise your kids?
No, I raised my kids from the time they were born until One was 11, the other one was 7.
And then from there on, who raised them?
Um, they were in and out of foster homes until the oldest one was 14. She was adopted. The youngest one, the one that was 7, she was in and out of group homes, foster homes. She was in a group home until she turned 18. And then they pretty much just threw him to the, kicked her out. So she had to deal with her trauma. So when I was in treatment is when I realized, when they told me that I had all this trauma that I needed to, because I was just covering it up. I was using drugs to numb the pain, and they diagnosed me with PTSD. A lot of the trauma is from my marriage, and the depression, the anxiety. I mean, I just got so much, but the thing that saved me 2 years ago is, like I said, I know that crack is a mind thing, and I was so far gone. The guy that I'm with, he was a very godly man, never did drugs or anything. And I always prayed, God, send me somebody that doesn't do drugs. And so I met him 5 years ago, and well, I knew him, but I started dating him 5 years ago, and I was taking his money. I mean, it was terrible the way I treated this man. But when I got out of treatment and I relapsed on crack, and then I got sober. I was sober for 6 months, and then I
After the
relapsed.
relapse?
After the first relapse, I went to church pretty much and told God, please take this away from me. And, so for 6 months, I was sober from crack, and I haven't done any opiates. I haven't relapsed. So my one daughter I was home alone. Like I said, I was sober. I was home alone, and my daughter had sent me a text or something and telling me, because this is another situation, but things that she was going through, she was blaming me for it. And she said, I was the reason of this. I was the reason of that. I was the reason of this. And I was home alone. First thing I did is I went out here and I got high again. And the last relapse, and this is what I'm talking about, was the worst. And they tell you each relapse gets worse, it gets harder. And oh my goodness, I was so far gone. I was taking people to steal stuff. I was stealing off my mom, something that I never in a million years thought I would ever do. And like I said, I never had a relationship with my sister because I relapsed and relapsed. And I was promising my mom I'd come and cook and for holidays, and and then when my nephew passed away, and I just was never there. I isolated myself. And so, like I said, my boyfriend gave me an ultimatum. You either got to stop or you got to go. And I had a car. We didn't own our place at the time. We were living in a trailer, and, he was giving me all his money to get high. So our bills was I lost cars because of it. They repoed them. But 2 years ago, the doctor that I was in a MAP program, I know you know what that is. And the doctor I was seeing, he gave me different medication to try to help me get off of crack, which, like I said, it's a mind thing. And so I took the medication, but I was also using at the same time. So it didn't help. So I knew that this medication was going to make me sleepy. And I told my boyfriend, I said, look, I've got to quit. I'm tired. I was so tired of the hustle. I was tired of getting up, chasing it. I was tired I thank God every day that I never went to jail. Never. I never got caught for stealing. I never got caught I should have, for getting high in my car, lighting lighters at midnight, And so I knew that the only way that I could get sober is I had to get it out of my head. And 2 years ago, March 23rd, I had told my boyfriend, I'm like, look, the only way I'm going to be able to do this, because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I said, the only way I'm going to do this is I got to go to sleep. I've got to get this out of my mind. That day, I took my medication that made me sleep. And I got on my knees and I prayed to God. I said, God, I know that, and these are the words I told him. I said, I know you took this away from me before. I said, but I'm asking you, if you take this addiction away from me and really take it away from me, I will live right. 4 days later, I woke up. I didn't have no craving. I didn't have no withdrawals. I didn't want it. I ain't touched it since. And I go to church, and I'm here by the grace of God. I mean, you will never convince me that God is not what pulled me out of the darkness, because I own my own home. I own my own car. I have a relationship with my sister. I have a relationship with my kids, my grandkids. It's amazing. And, and like I said, I used to blame my husband for everything, but he is, because of him is what made me strong today. That's how I feel. So yeah, but it's been a journey, and I will live every day, every minute, every second struggling, because and I have these few months, believe me, I have. My mom passing away. Everybody thought, well, she's going to relapse, but that wasn't what my mom wanted, and I know that, and I prayed, God, please, you got to give me the strength to get through this, because I was so close to my mom. And I still have times where I break down and I miss her. Today, like I said, it'll be a year in August that my mom passed, but I know she got to see me sober. And so, I'm very grateful. And if anybody out there struggling, ask for it. Don't be afraid. Don't, because you're worth it. You're worth everything, and reach out to somebody, because there is life, or there's light at the end of the tunnel. But I'm very, very, very grateful to my pastor. I'm very grateful to my church family, very grateful to my boyfriend, my sister. I'm just grateful for everybody that's in my life, because without them, I would not be here today.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. And you beat me to it. I was going to ask you one last question, which was any advice for people, but it sounds like you already gave some advice.
Yeah. I mean, hey, look me up. I would love to be anybody's talk. I can even listen to you, if you want to know, anything, any questions or anything, just look me up. My name's Kathy Mashburn. Don't hesitate. I'm not afraid to, but like I said, there is light. There is light, and I'm very, very grateful for where I am today. And there's hope. We do recover. We do recover, and take it one day at a time, 1 second at a time, and you'll get there. Don't ever say you got it, because I used to say it all the time. I got this, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And you can't do it alone. You've got to have support, and and that's what I tell people. God was what saved me, and no one will ever convince me of anything other than that.
That's great. I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before we go?
No, I just thank you for letting me tell my story, and I hope that it helps somebody. And like I said, look me up. I can be your friend. I can talk to you or whatever. And God bless.
All right, sounds good. So everyone that is watching and listening, if you like what you saw, go below and give us a like. Also click subscribe. You can see when we upload new videos. You can also check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, or on Facebook, where if you go to the events tab, you'll see your nightly schedule of Zoom meetings. And also check out addicts-anonymous.com. So that's addicts-anonymous.com. And you'll see there's a lot of resources available. We're always uploading literature, and there's a bunch of other stuff on there. So I hope everyone enjoyed today, and that's all we have. So until next time.